Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Westrick. I'm with Partners Resource Network, and we have with us today Allison Schaberg. She is with Consolidated Planning Group. And just to let you know a little bit about what we do, every state has a parent training and information center. That is what Partners Resource Network is. And we actually, we're a nonprofit. We are grant funded by the Department of Education, Office of Special Education in Washington, D.C. So we're free to parents, and we help parents and youth understand their rights under IDEA, as well as resource. We also find programs and service options, or help you to find those, help you understand your disability, understand state and federal laws. So that is what we do. And now I am going to turn it over to Allison so that she's the star of the show.
Thank you for having us. It's great to be back with you today. So let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping items. I always kind of start out with the housekeeping items. Everybody is in webinar mode today, so that means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. We're glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about higher education for individuals with disabilities. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will get a copy of today's slides as well as the recording by email. So you don't have to take notes of everything. There's a whole bunch of links today in the slides, so you don't have to jot all those down. You'll be able to just take the slides and use the links yourself. So as she said, I'm Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We help families just like yours plan for the future. When we think about transition planning, we're thinking about transition planning from, from a perspective of the financial side. What happens if we have a child that may have care needs the rest of their life, not just the rest of ours? We're able to put together those future care cost estimates, and that number that people are curious about. How much do we need to fund a special needs trust? How much do we need to leave for them when we're gone? And we're able to, just put lifetime care plans in place when we have a loved one with a disability that is maybe never going to leave home or leave home fully, may need some support. It's almost like a third retirement. So as parents, if we're going to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement ourselves, the planning that we do and the knobs that we turn and the careful consideration and steps that we take now is going to make a difference down the road when you get ready to pull the trigger on that retirement. So we are happy to help you guys in that arena. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. I'm also a parent. So I always say, kind of jokingly, but not, I eat, sleep, and breathe this both personally and professionally. So I know the journey, and the journey is tough. And we have a YouTube channel. Maybe you've attended some of our webinars in the past. If so, we're glad you're back. If this is your first time, we're glad you're here. We have a YouTube channel that is geared towards special needs. There's over 200 webinars out there on topics that are related to you and your journey. It could be SSI, guardianship, special needs trust, waivers. The list just goes on and on. So if we hit on something today that you need to learn more about, you can find our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that for free. It's in the chat box, and it'll be in this presentation as well, so you guys can find it there. So today, we're talking about educational options after high school for special needs families, and what are some of the considerations that we need to be thinking about on this journey. And this, for me, as a parent, kind of looking at this several years ago and kind of going through this, I would say that it was kind of roll up your sleeves and get ready. It's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to consider as you're considering these options and where we go from here. So first things first, we always start by talking about setting realistic expectations. Is your child's path a traditional path or a non-traditional path? And we always talk about, they are where they are. They're not behind. And I think sometimes as parents, we live in that comparison mode, comparison of other kids, that, you know, the Facebook greatness that, you know, people post and things like that. But I think it's important for us to really keep in mind where they are and understand that they are where they are. They're not behind. Maybe, you know, we have loved ones with a disability that may be academically gifted and advanced, and we have other loved ones with a disability that may have an intellectual disability, or, you know, they may be a struggling learner, or other maturity issues that may come along with their diagnosis. So there's all kinds of doors and paths that we can walk through, and there's not one that's necessarily better than the other. It's about choosing the right path for your loved one. So, you know, some things, you know, we think about, you know, in the school, we have the ability to stay in the public school until 22. There are, you know, transition programs, 18+ programs, and other programs that are available. There are ones that are available through your ISD. And then there are also private pay transition programs outside of your ISD as well. So we're thinking also about trade school, community college. A lot of these, as we're thinking about transitioning and you're working with your partners at the school and transitioning, a lot of these community colleges have dual credit courses in high school. And this may be something that you might want to try your hand at taking one course at the community college as a dual credit course. And I'm not calling it the right name, but basically all colleges and universities, the community colleges, they basically have a class. It's a 4-credit class that is like introduction to university studies or introduction to college studies. And the whole course is really designed to teach them how to be a successful college student. And it's a really, really helpful course. So that might be a good start. Just thinking about that. And so some of us may have kids that are homeschooled, and the dual credit options are pretty good out there for the homeschooled as well. And they all of these community colleges, they typically have a coordinator that will help with the dual credit. And of course, your counselors at the public high school also, you know, work with community colleges, so you can kind of plug into your school counselor in that way. So we've got, you know, we talked about trade school and community college. We've got university degree programs, certificate programs, and licenses. And sometimes I think that those are forgotten. Sometimes we have it like ingrained in our heads that these kids have got to go to college and they have got to graduate college. But, you know, there are a lot of kids out there, both with or without disabilities, that have gone through certificate programs or licensing programs and are making more than some of their counterparts that went to a 4-year university. So, you know, think of trades. I mean, there's so many trades out there that are lucrative, HVAC, you got plumbing, there's just so many out there that are worth checking into, because that might be a first step. So maybe if we're not there yet from a perspective of living on campus or a 4-year university, or maybe we'll never be there, who knows? You know, think about what kind of license could your loved one get, you know, what kind of program. There are such things as registered apprenticeships too, through the Department of Labor. So there are all kinds of programs out there which they'll basically have a job and be learning on the job and learning a trade. So those are things to keep in mind. The DOL, the Department of Labor, and you kind of Google registered apprenticeships, that's something that you can look into. But they're pretty cool and a good way to learn on the job and get hands-on training while learning a trade. So we can think about a reduced college course load. And when I talk about that, you know, some people don't like the idea of a reduced course load. A full-time student is, you know, 12 credit hours, but maybe your student is up for 12 credit hours, and maybe 12 credit hours is simply going to send them over the edge. It's too much. So again, it's okay to start slowly. It's okay to start with one or two courses. It's okay to try your hand, which is what I recommend, because it's not a race. You know, we can say, okay, they should graduate in 4 years, or if it's a 2-year program, it should be 2 years or whatever. But if it takes them longer to get where they're going, but they get there successfully and they feel good about what they're doing, and they're having some success in gaining gaining some of that maturity and understanding along the way. If we have a reduced course load, that's still okay. And, you know, we talk about living at home versus on campus. Is your student ready? We're going to talk about some of the traits that are necessary that you should think about if your student possesses or not, on whether or not they may be a good fit to be living on campus. And the truth is our neurotypical kids, many kids at age 18, are, you know, not necessarily ready to live on campus. How many stories have we heard forever and ever of, well, you know, my first year of college, I failed out, or I got all F's, or I partied a little bit too much, or things like that. Those are all things that, you know, are true for all students, not just kids with learning differences. Think about partnerships with other organizations to live on campus. There's some programs, we're going to talk about that. The Texas Workforce Commission, vocational rehab, workforce solutions, and that may be programs that you have participated in so far. Some are Earn and Learn or the pre-employment training services. They all often refer to it as PREETs, but that's the pre-employment training services. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's think about a career path, the ideal work settings. There are tests out there that you can do with community college, with the university, with the guidance office, at the local high school. And these tests don't take long. They're usually 5 or 10 minutes, and it's kind of a personality survey, but it asks about your students' likes and dislikes and things like that, and it kind of spits out some ideas or some career paths that might be worth checking into, that your student would be happy and would thrive in. So these are things that you can download one online. You can look this up yourself. They have free versions. I know, like Houston Community College, they have a free version of this, but there's all kinds of those out there, and they don't take long to do, but it does give you some direction if your student doesn't necessarily know what they want to do. That's just something else as parents and society as a whole. You know, it's like you're supposed to start high school and you're supposed to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. And a lot of us adults, you know, they don't know what they want to do for the rest of their life. And how does a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old that has worked very little or maybe not at all know what they want to do for the rest of their life? So these little surveys and tests are a good place to start. So we do have a list for post-high school options for special needs day and transition programs. So we're not going over that list today, but you can reach out and ask for that list. There are day and transition programs all over the state. So if you feel like your student maybe isn't there yet, maybe they haven't arrived, maybe, you know, some of our kids have maturity that is, you know, 2 to 5 years behind their peers. From a maturity level, maybe they're not ready yet, that, you know, maybe we're still hopeful and optimistic that they're going to get there. They are going to get there, but maybe some of those other programs that's going to build some of those life skills, maybe build some of those vocational trades and other things like that, that might be a good place to start. And again, it's not a race. You are where you are. So if that is a good place to start and that leaves your loved one feeling happy and fulfilled and important, and that they're you know, they're making progress, and that is a big part of it, because at the point so here are the 6 traits as students with learning disabilities need to succeed. They need to have some self-awareness. They need to know a little bit more about what are their strengths and weaknesses, both academic and non-academic areas. So spending time talking about those things and working on those things, and just clear self-awareness of who they are, what they stand for, you know, what makes them tick, you know, what makes them fall apart, what are, you know, hard situations for them. That's very important. They need to be proactive. And have some perseverance to be, you know, to be able to muddle through things. Some things are hard. They need to have some goal setting ability, and the presence and use of effective social support systems, and of course the emotional coping strategies. And these are all things, and again, what I would say here is this is true for all college-bound kids. It's not just our kids, with learning disabilities or any type of disability. These are all 6 traits that really need to be present for success at higher education. So these are things to be thinking about and asking yourself: is my student there, where are they, you know, are we falling short in any one of these bullet points? And then, you know, kind of set yourself as you're thinking of transitioning and things like that to work on these areas that you might, you know, you might need to work on. Okay. So this one is a really, really important slide. This is accommodations and offices of disability on the college and university level. So one of the things that I found as a parent, I found very frustrating personally, is that when we start getting to the college and university level, nothing is created equally. Although there are state schools all throughout the state, all throughout the United States, and basic premise, they, you know, play the same sports teams and things like that, but they have different sets of rules. They have different offices of disability. They have different, they operate differently, all of them. So, so what I would say is, as you're considering various programs and kind of narrowing down your list, I always suggest a spreadsheet, and I always get the eye roll at that point. But of putting, you know, putting the schools on the list that have the degree path, the certificate program, or whatever program that you're interested in. So let's first look at the schools that have the programs that might interest your loved one. Then what I would do secondarily is I would start doing my homework on the offices of disability. Offices of disability are not created equally. Some of them are really, really great, and they're really, really staffed, and they have a lot of resources and a lot of electronic resources and other things that are free to your student. Others are very small, and they may have 1 or 2 people in there. They don't have big budgets for resources for individuals with disabilities. So you know your student, you know what accommodations that they've been getting in the school, whether they're public, private, whether they're homeschooled, you know what the accommodations are that they need. Those same accommodations setting, and you want to make sure that you're setting them up for success at being in an institution where those accommodations can be made and can be set up properly on the front end, not 4 weeks into the semester where they already have both hands behind their back and they're already struggling. Okay, so really look at this early. And the big thing I want to tell you here is our 504s and our IEPs don't transfer to higher education. While they will take a copy of your, you know, 504, your IEP, they don't just transfer. Just because you were getting accommodations in the school in the lower grades does not mean that you're going to get accommodations on the college level. So you know, so we want to spend time determining what accommodations are necessary and why. And what a lot of these schools are going to do, and this is, again, this is an example of every school and what they require is different. So you have to go to their website. They all have an office of disability. You can go to their website. It will tell you how to apply for accommodation, what proof is necessary. Usually they're going to want to see some neuropsych testing, whatever type of testing, learning disability testing that has been done where they have made recommendations for accommodations. So having that testing updated in the last 3 to 5 years is important. They have kind of loosened the guideline after COVID because testing was becoming difficult. With COVID. So some of the guidelines are longer. The testing could be older than that. Some of them are shorter. And what I have found is, so let's just say for a moment, you have a student that has a disability and the disability just really doesn't even change. And the accommodations that they have now are the same accommodations they had in the 3rd grade. You know, this may be something where instead of, you know, going out and spending, you know, $3,000 to $5,000 on this testing that insurance doesn't typically pay for, that that maybe you can have a letter from the PCP, from the psychiatrist or the psychologist, basically stating that they've been seeing your loved one this many years, and that these are the diagnosis, and it hasn't changed, and here are the impairments as a result of the diagnosis, and here are the accommodations that are needed. Here is the old testing, but I'm writing to say that it just really hasn't changed that much, and these are the accommodations that are necessary. I have actually seen schools accept that letter with an outdated test in those examples. So it's worth asking, is my point. So let's talk about the SAT, ACT, AP exams, college courses, graduate level exams. First and foremost, SAT and ACT. So the SAT is going to be the collegeboard.org. And if you go to the collegeboard.org, you can Google in there in the little search box in their website and say disability accommodations or accommodations, and it's going to take you to their page on how you're going to request accommodations for the SAT. So again, just because your student has an IEP doesn't can do this yourself as a parent. If you're a homeschooler, private school and public school, they usually have a counselor that can help with this, but you might need to ask, and we suggest that you do it early. Examples of accommodations on the SAT might be a extra time. I've seen up to 100% more time, 50% more time for those students that might have processing speed delays or working memory issues. I've seen a reader. I've seen use of computer. I've seen test setting in a private setting, meaning instead of them being in a class of 200 students, maybe they're in the guidance counselor's office taking their exam. This might be in the example of kids that have extreme test anxiety, or they have kind of attention issues and things like that. So ACT, same thing. ACT has a website. You can search in their box for accommodations, and they'll give you what they need. So let's talk about this. If your child is not going to the university first, if they're going to go to the community college first, my opinion is, and you can take it for whatever it's worth, my opinion is why put them through the SAT and the ACT unless you just want to practice and see how they do. The SAT and the ACT is not required for the community college. It just isn't. So if they're going to go to the community college first, they don't necessarily have to take the SAT or the ACT if you don't want them to. So be thinking about that. There is something called the TSI, which is the Texas Success Initiative. And that test is basically testing reading, writing, and math, and to see if they're on par to take 4 credit classes in college. You have to pass that, both community college, university, the TSI. There are free practice exams out there. There are paid for practice exams. We've done both. I like the paid for ones better. They weren't that expensive. But so you can practice on that, again, reading, writing, and math. So you could fail math and pass reading and be able to take a 4 credit reading class. You could pass 2 of the 3, you could pass all 3. But basically, if you fail any one of those courses, you won't be able to take 4 credit math, whatever that subject is, until you pass the TSI. So that's something from on the transition train. If you're thinking about that, that's something that you might want to start practicing on. And looking at that. And the TSI is not going to be required. So if your student is going through on a path like for a certificate program or a license or things like that, the TSI is not going to be required. So just think wisely. Some kids really have test anxiety. Some kids are really bright and they test really poorly. That's a thing. Some kids are really ADD or ADHD, and they like to, what I call bubble, because they just want to get through the test. They're not even reading the questions. The reading passages are too long, so they're just bubbling on their paper. They've learned well with their number 2 pencil on how to bubble, and then you get these horrible results, and you're mortified as a parent. Anyway, it might have happened to me a couple of times. So anyway, just the other important thing that I want to talk to you about here is the FERPA and the power of attorney. So the FERPA is basically a document that you're going to need. When your student goes to higher education, they're going to need a FERPA on file for you to be able to call, to talk, to intervene, to work with the Office of Disability, to call about anything and get any information about your student should you need to, okay, because some of our students need some help. That FERPA is going to need to be signed. And that is true for all students. I've heard families before be mad that the school lets you pay for their tuition, but when you call to get information, they tell you nothing. But it's just the law. The FERPA is the law, and it's all the institutions. So just know about that. And also, I am a fan of a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. Having those in place for your students, all students 18 and above that are going off to college, whether they have a disability or not, definitely a fan of that. So if something happens to them, if, anything could happen, I refer back to a family that we serve that's kid was in the apartment fire at Texas State. I've, refer back to families that have had kids that have had mental health crisis and were taken to a facility, and without a healthcare power of attorney and those documents in place, they're not even going to tell you where they took your kid. So if your kid gets hurt, if there's an accident, if there's something going on, and you don't have that healthcare power of attorney in place, they're not going to tell you anything. And it's like a needle in a haystack. If you're, you got a kid in San Antonio or Austin or Houston or whatever, there's no telling where they are, and nobody will tell you anything. So it's really, really important to get that and have those in place. And this, we're not talking about our parents right now or anything like that, but think about yourself. What do you have in place? Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a healthcare power of attorney? Do you have aging parents? Do they have these documents? These are all documents that are important for families to have and to share and to think about. So what we're going to do now is we've got, and again, you guys are going to get a copy of your of this presentation. And I think I should have mentioned earlier, if you guys have questions throughout this presentation, just put them in the chat box. We'll get to them as many as we can. So this is a list. This is a list that we've compiled. We don't work for them. They don't work for us. Various programs that are available, throughout. Basically all of them throughout the state of Texas. Lynn University is actually in Florida. It's not in Texas, but they work very, very well with kids with disabilities. So we've got a list out here. Some of them are certificate programs. Some of them might be degree programs. Some might be, kind of a transition program, various programs that are available. And so you're going to want to research these. What might be a good fit for your student. And just, you want to make yourself aware of how many slots do they have? Are they meeting in person? Are they meeting online? Some of them moved online with COVID. Most of them have moved back, but some of them haven't. So researching these early when you're making that spread. Do they have open? How long is their program? Is it months? Is it a few years? How long does this last? What do they come out with? Do they come out with a certificate? Do they come out with a license? Is there any, program where they can live there? Those are all things that I think are worth considering. So these blue lines, there's going to be links to all of these, so you guys can research those on your own. There's so many programs across the state. There's a lot of programs all across the United States. And yes, your kids with intellectual disabilities, there are programs for them. So if you're thinking, maybe they wouldn't fit, we're not there yet, or whatever, don't put yourself in a box, is all I'm saying. Is, be open to kind of looking at some of these, because some of these programs are geared specifically for kids just like yours. And they find community, they find friends, they're learning skills, and they're growing. So just be aware of that. So this is just a few more of them. One of the places that we talk about is Think College. They do have a Facebook group. I suggest that you subscribe to their Facebook group. They do have a website, and they're really the only directory of its kind that really has, colleges and universities offering post-secondary education for kids with intellectual disabilities. This is free. You can search this online. So this is something, if you're open to, out of state or other options, or if you're joining this webinar and you're from out of state, there's a lot of resources out there that you can find on Think College. And I like the Facebook group too. The Facebook group is good. And you can put, specific questions for programs that you might be interested in, and maybe other families have had, experience with that, so you can go deeper with that. So we've been talking about spreadsheets. We have been talking about, researching the Office of Disability and the various programs out there. We do have a lot of families that reach out and say, hey, can you just refer us to somebody that's going to do this for us? We just want to hire a college, consultant. So it's true that there's a lot of college consultants out there, but what is also true is very few of them are nuanced and special needs or working with kids who have disabilities. disabilities. So Jody Glau, she's an independent educational consultant, and she specializes in working with kids that learn differently to find their best fit. She tours around. She knows schools all across the country, and she is eligible for hire if you're interested in working with somebody that's going to take some of the work away. Maybe you don't have enough, you have enough on your plate and you can't, run with all of this. You need somebody else to help narrow that down for you, and you want to hire that out. Again, she doesn't work for us. We don't work for her, but we've partnered with her on webinars in the past. And I think we do have one that is coming up with her in the future, but you guys can go to her website. You can reach out to her directly. And I would say that families have had some good luck with her if you're looking to hire that out. Throughout the United States, and definitely one in Texas. And this is where basically they live there, and they might go to community college like Blinn, or they might go to A&M. But they're also working on the independent living skills, social development, academics, and career development. The fee for the college living learning experience is separate from any tuition that you would pay to the college or the university. So you would have to look at that from a budget perspective on whether or not that is something that is viable. What I would say is the fees for CLE are going to be in line with what probably you would pay for a residential program or something along those lines. Between paying for the community college or the university and CLE, it would probably be about the same cost as some of the residential programs that we've looked at in Texas. So Campus Connections, this is a good program. Bloom Consulting, again, we don't work for them. They don't work for us, but we like Bloom. Bloom does a really good job. They have a lot of different programs. They are eligible. You could hire them personally to do a vocational evaluation. So if you're wondering what could your student do, what would they be capable of doing? What are their gaps or impediments to employment? Bloom Consulting actually does do that vocational evaluation. So that's something that you can reach out to them personally for. Also, they are also contracted with Vocational Rehab, the Workforce Commission. And sometimes the Workforce Commission will order that vocational evaluation if your child is enrolled in VR. It's commonly called VR, but it stands for Vocational Rehab. But they have a lot of different programs. They have a group home in the greater Houston area. And so anyway, my point is I would check out their website. They're worth checking out. But they do have a Campus Connection program, which is cool. It's kind of a wraparound program. So let's say you have a student that has a disability. You believe that they can go to the college or the university. They just have a wraparound program that really has an individualized support team, which pairs a student with a connection coach. And they're getting mentoring and guidance and navigational support. And so this takes some of the stuff off of a parent, because most of our kids, when they're at that age, they don't want us to tell them what to do anymore. They don't love our advice. So this kind of takes you out of that role and puts somebody in a coach that is focused on their goals and objectives and keeping them on pace. And they're working on problem solving and all kinds of other things, self-advocacy and things that are important to our kids and their growing independence. This is private pay. It could be covered by VR if that's in line with your plan. You have a plan with VR. Each student is in VR. They have, a kind of a get to work plan and what they need. So if it's in line with that plan, it could be covered. But it is private pay at $1,000 per month, which is what I would say is if we're really looking for a wraparound program, and this is the third leg on the stool, the three-legged stool that's really going to help your child get there and be successful at the university level, it's worth it. There is something called trios on the university level, and these are for like first-generation college students. So if your student would be a first-generation college student, there's a lot of different programs out there, but TRIO is one that's worth looking into, and they may have programs and supports in place that would be free to your student, but TRIO fills up quick, and so you should apply early and make yourself aware of any programs that might be available at the university as well. Okay, so we've talked about workforce solutions. We have entire webinars on Workforce Commission and VR and workforce solutions, but we've got a student hireability navigator. Houston for Anna Clues, Deborah Irwin is North Central Texas. They're all over the state, and these ladies can connect you depending on where you are to speak with your hireability navigator. And most of the schools, definitely the public schools, have a VR counselor that they work with. So if VR and some of the things that I was talking about, like pre-employment training services, PREETs, is something that is foreign to you, you can reach out to your school counselor. There's links here. You can click the link. You can self-refer your student for vocational rehab. And again, vocational rehab is they have programs that start as early as 14 years old to 22. They have for adults too, but 14 to 22 for our students that are kind of transitioning. And the whole point of vocational rehab is to assess and to identify what are the impediments to employment of your student, and then put training programs and resources and goals in place to help close those gaps on the impediment to employment. So I do recommend people look into this program. They have a summer earn and learn program where they have partnered with other companies and jobs, and your students get jobs in the summer, usually 8 to 10 weeks. They'll be able to try their hand at work. They have job coaches. There's a lot of different resources that are available. There's three different programs that I'm thinking of, which is VR, which is the Workforce Commission, and then we got Workforce Solutions that works on the PREET side of the house, and the Summer Earn and Learn. So there's some just some more information on that. If that is your path, or if you want your student to try their hand at working and see how they do, take advantage of these resources. These are state and federally funded. They have state and federal dollars to implement these programs. So these programs are not costing you. So it's definitely worth checking into. Okay, so what about funding? Let's talk about funding. The FAFSA, the free application for student aid, it's available each year, October 1st. So it just opened up for the following school year. You're going to need to complete this each year, even if you think you make too much money, okay? The FAFSA changed, and some of the things that they calculated before, they're not calculating now, and some things that they weren't calculating before, they are now. So you may want to re-examine this if you're not, if you haven't visited the FAFSA in a long time. Maybe it's been since you went to college, or maybe it's been 4 years or plus since another child went through college, but you're going to want to look at this. A lot of the scholarships out there require the FAFSA. So even though you might make too much money, they still require the FAFSA to be able to apply for some of the scholarships. So there's scholarships, community-based, school-based, disability, disease-based, sport, music, band-based. There's so many out there. I mean, there are scholarships for siblings that have siblings with disabilities. So this is another spreadsheet, and I'm sorry in advance for that. But research early and know your deadlines, because once again, I was irritated to find out that all of the scholarship deadlines, when the application opens up and when it closes, they're all different, and all the requirements are different. So if you're applying for several, scholarships, you're going to want to know those opening and closing dates, and you want to apply early, and you want to know what is kind of going to be involved with this. I didn't mention earlier, but I am a fan of that senior year, the year the junior year. So junior year summer, okay? So they've completed their junior year, it's summer. That's when I would start working on our essays, because you think that in the senior year, a lot of times we think, okay, we're going to start applying for college. So junior year summer is, again, you've completed the junior year. They're going to be starting their senior year in the fall. That's when I would be working on your essays. A lot of these scholarship require essays. The essay prompts are out there on Google. You can Google them. There's 3 of them each year. They change. I recommend having your students work on their essays on the summer. I recommend hiring somebody to review their essays. Don't write them for them. But senior year comes fast and furious, and between, you know, sports and other activities and just the school course load, trying to write 3 essays after school starts the senior year is tough. So when you write them during the summer, you already have them. Then when you start applying for these scholarships and applying to schools, it's easy to upload them. It's easy to edit them quickly, and off they go. This is a kind of a, it's a nightmare for a lot of families if you wait to the last minute, and there's a lot of tears. There's tears if you do it in the summer because the kid's mad that you're making them do it, and then there's tears if you wait at the last minute. So either way, I say plan early. Okay, so talking about 529 college savings plans, of course, they can pay for college, but also an ABLE account. 529C for college, 529A for an ABLE account. And an ABLE account, we're going to talk about it in just a second. And an ABLE account can pay, basically, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. It grows tax-free. But you can pay for college out of the ABLE account, and many other things. Whereas if you have, we see families all the time that have a 529C college savings plan for their student, and then if their student doesn't go to college, then they're taxed and penalized to pull the money out. What do we do? You know, there are conversions to ABLE accounts. That's one thing that can happen. But so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And again, we've talked about VR several times, but they may be able to provide support for funding for college if it's in line with the goals established within the plan for the individual to find competitive employment. So these are, you know, and you know, there are other factors. There are factors for income and things like that, but you don't necessarily have to be indigent to get help or to get vocational rehab. And we have seen where vocational rehab, we've seen a couple of things. Number one, when vocational rehab is doing their assessments, they're doing things like the vocation evaluation that I mentioned, like the neuropsych testing that you might need for the accommodations. And these are things that are going to be covered by the vocational rehab program. And again, once that plan is in place, if higher education, a certificate program, a license program, a college or university program is in line, then they may be able to provide some support there as well. Okay, so ABLE accounts. Let's basically talk about, I'm actually going to forward this slide, but the bottom line is with an ABLE account, you can have an ABLE account if the disabled individual's disability started prior to age 26. You don't have to open the account prior to 26. The disabled individual's disability just had to start prior to 26. Contributions could be made by anyone. It's limited to the gift tax annual exclusion, which is currently $16,000 a year for 2022. 2023 is $17,000. And so you can have up to $17,000 a year. And if the individual with a disability is working, they can contribute up to an additional $12,880. An ABLE account is a place that an individual can have money that will not be counted for SSI and Medicaid purposes. It's important to understand this, but it's also important to understand, although you can have, I think, $500,000 into an ABLE account, only $100,000. You can only have up to $100,000 if you don't want to disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. So you got to be kind of pay attention to those limits, and just keep in mind that if your student is getting Medicaid or SSI, or will be applying for SSI and Medicaid when they turn 18, which is pretty common, you're never going to want more than $100,000 in that account. Distributions for qualified disability expenses are not taxable. And again, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can basically pay for it out of an ABLE account. Another cool thing about the ABLE account is you can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. We have entire presentations on the ABLE account. We have, and our firm can help set one up for you. We have entire presentations about SSI and Medicaid and what to do and what not to do on things like that. Rollovers, it could be rolled over to other family members who are eligible beneficiaries. There is a such thing as, basically rolling the money from a 529C to a 529A. And if you're not sure if your child is going to go to college and they have a 529C and they definitively have a disability, it might be smart to move it over to an ABLE account, because that would allow the ability to get the money out without taxes and penalties, as long as it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. At death, states may be able to claim reimbursement. This is called a Medicaid payback. And there you can kind of Google a Medicaid payback, and there's calculations for that. It's clear as mud. It's very, very confusing, but basically, what they're saying is if there's money left in this account, there could be a Medicaid payback if your child was getting Medicaid benefits. So this is just an example of some of the things, again, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. These are just some of the examples that you can pay for. But the list goes on and on, okay, because many things can be construed as achieving a better life. Okay. So these next slides, I'm going to run through quick. I'm not going to go through this one by one. These are links that you guys can explore yourself when it comes to scholarships. One thing that I would mention is if you have adopted kids through the DFPS, the state adoption system, those kids go to college for free. So you might want to look at that. There's a tuition waiver. If you have forgotten about that through the state foster system or whatever, private adoptions don't count, but the state foster system, the state system does count. So you want to look at that. Another thing that I wanted to mention to you is that, you can ask for a list of scholarships from the child life specialist at any specialty clinic you go to. I mean, for instance, Texas Children's, Baylor, any of the children's hospitals all across the state, all across the U.S., they have a child life specialist, and oftentimes they have scholarships, disease-specific scholarships. So if you see 4 different specialists, I'd ask 4 different child life specialists at the various clinics for their scholarships, because you might find some that way. So let's talk about the scholarships a little bit more. I would say choose wisely. Again, I had my spreadsheet for this. Some of the scholarships that are going to give $500 are as rigorous an application process as the scholarships that's going to give $25,000. So I would say choose wisely. I mean, clearly there are some people that do not apply for those little ones, and so maybe if you apply, then you get that one. But I had to choose wisely. There's only so many hours in the day, so we chose the ones that would give the most bang for the buck, because quite honestly, $500 is going to pay for one book. So you can have your own strategy and kind of decide what might work best for you. Your guidance counselor, they're not helping apply for scholarships. Your student can't complete the FAFSA without you. They have to link it to your tax return. This is a kind of a parent guided help your student with this process, because it is a process. So whether your student is neurotypical or they have a disability, you're going to want to guide them through this process. The Terry Foundation Scholarship, I like to tell families about this. This is for Texas students and Texas students only, and through state universities throughout Texas. These are great scholarships. It's basically a 4-year scholarship, basically a full ride. And these are our kids that have leadership potential, character, a decent scholastic record. It doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to have perfect test scores. Financial need. They're giving these scholarships out to these kids that have given back. Okay, these kids that have a lot of volunteer hours. They give back. They are overcomers. They themselves have had a disability themselves, but they've been giving back. So maybe your student isn't a straight A student, and maybe they're not a great tester, but what can they do, and what are they doing, and are they giving back in their community? Are they volunteering for various charitable organizations beyond they volunteer at church? Because that's the oldest one in the book. They don't like that, right? But where are they volunteering? And so this is just worth checking into. The Terry Foundation Scholarship is awesome. You guys may have heard there are big rodeo scholarships. Those are a lot of big scholarships out there as well. So we've got links of all kinds of scholarships. You guys can peruse these links yourself and find ones that might be relevant to you. I'm not a fan of paying somebody to find scholarships for you. I'm not a fan for paying for those services. They're usually kind of I hate to use the word slimy, but they are a little bit, so be careful with that. There's just anything. If you can think it up, there's probably a scholarship for it. So just think about those, and it is worth your time to check this out and to have your spreadsheet, know that when they open up and when they close. So here's something that I found when my daughter went to college. You think you're starting the senior year, right? And you think, okay, well, at Christmas break, we are going to work on scholarships. And what I found, while some of them open in the spring, most of the good scholarships, those big ones, those applications are in the fall. And a lot of them close by December 1st or December 15th. So you thinking you're going to work on this on Christmas break, you've already missed the boat. And it's crazy to think because your student is a senior in high school, but that's why it's so important to understand these deadlines when they open up and when they close, and because they're all different, why it's so important to keep it kind of organized on a spreadsheet and know which ones that you're going to want to apply for. Okay, you'll be surprised at what comes through because a lot of people don't take the time. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe you've already got this college fund set up and you've got more money in the college fund than they'll ever need for college, and that's okay too. But a lot of families could use some help when it comes to some of these scholarships, and that's why we put this out there. Some of the books to consider, we're a fan. It's an older book, but Colleges That Change Lives is a great book. We always talk to people about that. And the Fifth Guide to Colleges, they probably got the 2023 version out. But anyway, there's a lot of good information in these books, so that may be something worth picking up on Amazon. So we have come to the basically to the end of our presentation today. We always talk about the things that should be on your radar, your special needs planning radar, and all of these topics that we have here, we do have webinars for. We have past webinars, and we will have webinars coming up on these topics. So in your link today, you will get, I think it's right here, you'll have a link to our upcoming webinars, and that'll tell you all the ones that you can register. Our webinars are always free. I am an advocate parent myself, so it gives me great pride to give information out there that, kind of around it through. We've, found or stumbled upon along the way. Our journey's always a little bit bumpy, but we're better coming together and kind of sharing these information, and these webinars are really designed to do that. So you can find those and see which ones might be most appropriate for you. We work on a collaborative team here at Consolidated Planning Group, and I always like to just put some faces with the names of the people on our team, and we work on an awesome team here at CPG. Our consultations, we are always free. So, when we have, a webinar with a number of people on, there's always a number of people that have specific questions. Maybe they were afraid to ask. Maybe they didn't want to put their personal information out there. If you need help, you need help on the planning journey, you need help on the future care cost estimates, transitioning, any of these things, reach out. We're happy to have a free consultation. Our consultations are by Zoom and talk to you about your specific needs and kind of where you are on your planning journey. We can definitely help. We've got our YouTube channel here, and we've also got our Facebook page. We do post upcoming events on our Facebook page. And again, all of our past webinars live on our YouTube channel. So if there are some specific topics like on the page where we had like some of the things that should be on your planning radar, those are places where you can find past recordings, but we will have some new ones coming up as well. So Linda, it has certainly been my pleasure being with you today. Thank you for having us back. I would like to open it up to see if anybody has any questions that I can answer before we go.
Yes, thank you, Allison, very much. Right now, let's see, I see one that says, thank you, Allison. Can someone outside the U.S. contribute to an ABLE account? And if so, how are taxes handled for such contributions?
That is a really good question, and I don't know the answer. I'm going to have to look that up. They say that anyone can contribute to an ABLE account. So basically, anyone can contribute to an ABLE account. As far as taxes handled for contributions, the account is not taxable, but being able to deduct that on your taxes, I don't think that that's going to be such a thing. So you can reach out to us directly and we'll look at that. But in general, I guess I've never had anybody outside of the country say, you know, can we contribute? But in general, they say anybody. It doesn't have to be the person, the individual with the disability. It doesn't have to be their parents. Anybody can contribute to the ABLE account. I know that for sure, but I've never bridged that with outside of the country. That's a great question. So, okay, do we have any additional questions today?
I do not see any more.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Happy Tuesday, and it's certainly been our pleasure to be here with you today. And I wish you well on this journey. It's not scary with the with the information that you've received and some of the tools and resources, and basically having a plan and working your plan. It's not going to make this, it sounds daunting, but it's not going to make it as daunting as it might seem. So we're here to help, and I hope this has been helpful as you're kind of thinking about your next steps and where you might want to go. So thank you, Linda. Again, it's been a pleasure, and we will connect with you again soon.
Okay, sounds great.
Bye, everyone.
I've also launched a poll, so if the attendees could please fill that out. It helps us when it comes to our grants, because since we are grant funded, and my information and Allison's information is in the chat box if you need to reach us. And I really appreciate everyone for being here, and thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.